What's up guys, my name's Stu, and today we are looking at more news from Cryptic. Yesterday they announced that we are finally getting some new Lower Decks content in the game, including a new ship. So let's talk about the first ship from Lower Decks blog announcement. While the blog is called the first ship from Lower Decks, it also includes ground gear and the uniform from Lower Decks as well. I'm not going to read out the full blog, I'm just going to go over the highlights, but if you want to read it yourself, I will link it down below in the description. First is the uniform, which looks absolutely fantastic. It includes the standard duty uniform as well as the Admiral's uniform we've seen in a couple episodes. There's really not much else to say about it. There's no gear attached to it like the Jat Vash armor, it's just the costume. Sadly, it is a low-buy store costume, so it's not going to be cheap, and it will be a single character unlock. And while that is annoying, it really shouldn't be a surprise after how they released the 32nd Century uniforms. Next up is a set of ground gear, including what they're calling special issue phaser weapons and a kit module. The phaser weapons have a special ammo mechanic that determines the power of their secondary firing modes. The more ammo you have built up, the more powerful that secondary attack will be. First is the portable phaser cannon. Its primary fire is a deadly extended beam that deals significant damage, which certainly sounds impressive, but I can't really be sure on what that means until I actually see it in action, or without more information. The secondary fire is a charge-up blast, meaning the longer you hold down the button, the more powerful the blast will be. And with this ammo mechanic, you'll get multiple blasts based on the amount of ammo you have. Based on its description, the multi-barrel phaser sounds like a pistol version of the full auto phasers, except obviously this one has the special issue ammo mechanic as well, so potentially you'll be able to fire off multiple volleys of that suppressive fire. It's the same thing with the split beam rifle and the sniper rifle. The ammo charge will give you multiple charges of your secondary fire, but beyond that, they'll function like normal split beam or sniper rifles. Honestly, of the four of these, the phaser rifle actually sounds kind of interesting. Normally I don't like sniper rifles because they're single target weapons with a low firing rate, but the ability to fire off several sniper shots in quick succession, that could be interesting. Though like I said, it's hard to judge these based on just their blog description. We won't really know how well these perform until people start getting their hands on them. The last piece of ground gear coming out is the T-88 Diagnostic Toolkit. I think I called this a kit module earlier by mistake. This is actually a whole kit frame. At baseline, it improves phaser damage, health, crit chance, and kit readiness, which I'm really hoping aren't its mods. I'm hoping that's just some passive buff it gives, because a kit frame without as much kit performance as possible on it is useless. So if those actually are its mods, hopefully this thing can be re-engineered like the Ryzian kit frames. This kit frame also comes with an interesting diagnostic ability, which changes based on who you use it on. If you use it on a friendly player, you'll increase their crit severity. A friendly NPC will get bonus damage, and an enemy will have its damage resistance reduced. The effect of the diagnostic lasts longer than the ability's recharge time, so you'll be able to have this ability up on 2 to 3 targets at once. Now, you can use this ability on yourself, but the blog doesn't state what happens when you do. I'm going to assume that you get the same crit severity buff that friendly players get. There are several kit modules that work like that too, so that's a safe bet. Next are 4 personal traits, 2 for space and 2 for ground. Now, these first 3, they appear to be complete crap, but I'm going to go over them anyway. The first is a space trait called the Boimler effect. Anytime you activate a non-specialist bridge officer ability, you have a chance to recharge all your other bridge officer abilities. This one sounds kind of interesting, but I can't imagine it's going to be more effective than, say, an Aux to Bat build or Proof Photonic Officer. And if you're already using one of those, there's no point in using this. Improvised Boarding Party adds substantial physical damage over time to Boarding Party, and gives a chance for Control Bridge Officer abilities to trigger Boarding Party 1 on their targets. Again, sounds kind of interesting, but I can't imagine it's going to be enough physical damage to make Boarding Party actually useful. Though the fact that it can trigger under control abilities is kind of interesting, it makes me wonder if it could be useful for a control build. Though until I can see some actual numbers on this thing, I'm going to assume it's crap. Now for the ground traits, Lower Decks Experience, which is definitely the worst of the 4. This grants bonus damage anytime one of your bridge officers uses an ensign rank bridge officer ability. Only bridge officers, meaning this will be completely useless in TFOs or any other multiplayer content. There are even a handful of episodes that don't let you bring bridge officers. Seriously, this is the worst ground trait I have ever seen in this game. And for the last of the personal traits, Space Explorer is a great gig. Now this one's actually good. Not only does it give you a small bonus to kit readiness, but it also buffs your kit performance based on your kit readiness skill. This buffs 2 of the game's most important ground skills, so this is likely a good one to get. Though, like I said earlier, it's hard to say for certain without seeing some actual numbers. Now, the really bad news about all of this ground gear is that since this isn't a full lockbox release, all of these items are only available in the low-buy store. Typically what Cryptic usually does with a release like this is release a costume and 1 or 2 pieces of ground gear into the low-buy store, and then everything else goes into the latest lockbox. However, this time they're just releasing the new ship into the Infinity lockboxes, which they've done before, but they're also releasing the rest of these new items only into the low-buy store. This is really annoying because ground gear from the low-buy store is typically character bound on pickup, meaning you won't be able to sell it on the exchange. So if you're wanting to outfit your full away team with lower deck style weapons, that's a lot of low buy. This will be the first time personal traits were made available in the low buy store, so who knows if they'll be character bound or not. On the bright side, low buy store costumes tend to be unbound on pickup, but like I said, they are going to be expensive on the exchange. Honestly, the timing of this feels like a bit of a low buy sync. A lot of players have been finishing up the event campaign during the Kobayashi Maru event, and I'm sure a good number of people picked the 1500 low buy crystal reward, so this kind of feels like Cryptic motivating those players to spend their low buy. Now for what I'm sure most of you are actually here for, the ship. The Parliament Miracle Worker Surveyor Cruiser. I'm going to jump right into the stats here. It has a 4-4 weapons layout, so it's best suited as a broadside build. For the bridge officer seating, it's got a Lieutenant Tactical, a Commander Engineering Miracle Worker, a Lieutenant Engineering, a Lieutenant Commander Science, and a Lieutenant Universal Miracle Worker. For the consoles, it has 2 Tactical, 5 Engineering, 4 Science, and 1 Universal. It has a turn rate of 8.5 degrees per second, an impulse modifier of 0.15, and I've never seen friction/traction used in one of these, but I assume that's the inertia rating, meaning it has 40 inertia. At least that's what I'm assuming, because 0.4 inertia would be absolutely ridiculous. But overall, this means the ship will handle very similar to, say, the Atlas or the Resolute. It gets plus 10 to weapons power, plus 10 to auxiliary, plus 5 to engine power, and plus 5 to shield power. This is a Miracle Worker ship, so it will have the innovation mechanic. It's got all 4 cruiser communication array abilities, strategic maneuvering, shield frequency modulation, weapon system efficiency, and attract firepower. And it has the standard cruiser mastery package, meaning it has some really tanky passives. The ship's universal console is called Controlled Gravimetric Demolition. First, a deflector platform is deployed to maintain a demolition field around your target. I'm assuming that's what this blue bubble is. All targets inside the field will be rendered vulnerable to kinetic damage, which I'm assuming means they receive a debuff to kinetic damage. Though it says larger ships will be able to push through, which I'm guessing means they'll be able to escape the field and thus lose the debuff. The second thing it does is fire a stream of cohesive gravitons into the field, which will deal kinetic damage over time to any foes inside of it. The effect will also generate a small pull, ensuring that your enemies stay inside the field. The center of the field will then explode, causing one less big hit of kinetic damage to all the foes inside. This ability sounds like it could be pretty good for torpedo builds, though I'm not overly impressed with its passive buffs, which give kinetic and physical damage resistance rating, as well as exotic particle generator and structural integrity. Though depending on how high that EPG buff is, this could be good for science builds as well. Again, kinda hard to say how effective any of this will be without seeing some actual numbers. And finally, the Starship trait, Efficient Demolition. Defeating foes adds a small boost to the subsystem with the lowest power for a moderate duration, and over the next several seconds, additional activations will provide an increased boost. This trait sounds absolutely worthless. Generally, the subsystem with the least amount of power in it is the least useful, so why would I want more power in it? I was really excited about this ship. I really was. I'm a huge fan of Lower Decks, and this is the first ship from that show to show up in the game. And the Parliament is a really cool looking ship in my opinion. I was really excited to get my hands on it. But after reading this blog, I'm just disappointed. Not even that it's a lockbox ship, which I know is what most people are angry about. My issue is the absolutely terrible stats they gave this thing. I'm not even talking about the fact that it has a 4-4 weapons layout. I've done broadside builds before and I could do it again. But with the tactical and universal seats on this ship only going up to Lieutenant means you're not going to be able to get Beam Overload 3 or Fire at Will 3. You're going to have to settle for 2, which makes this ship pretty underpowered. Furthermore, it only has 2 tactical console slots. Yeah, it's a Miracle Worker ship, so it'll have the universal slot, and it gets one more if you upgrade it to T6X, but that's still going to leave this thing pretty underpowered in comparison to other Miracle Worker ships. The only thing this ship is going to be good for is tanking, and there are better ships for that. Some of them are even C-Store ships. Seriously, I can name 3 other ships that are similar to this but better, and that are also C-Store ships. There's the Baran, which has a very similar bridge officer layout to this. The big difference is that the Baran is a command ship, so it has the inspiration mechanic, but it also has the Ion Storm generator console, which is a must-have for tanking. There's the Gagarin, a Miracle Worker battlecruiser with a 5-3 layout, which makes it fantastic for beam overload. There's also the Tucker, another 4-4 Miracle Worker cruiser, but that one at least has some decent tactical power on it. Even the Scott and the Daystrom would be better than this thing. I get that Cryptic doesn't always make ships with the meta in mind. I don't understand why, but I get that they feel it's necessary. But seriously, Cryptic knows that lower deck ships have been in high demand since the show came out. So what's the point in giving it crappy stats and making it an expensive single character unlocked ship? If this were a C-Store ship, even with these crappy stats, I would be completely on board, ready and waiting to buy this thing. It wouldn't be the first time I bought a C-Store ship just for the sake of Space Barbie or a silly theme build. Just wait till you guys see what it did with the Romulan support carrier. But doing that for a lockbox ship? That is just way too expensive and not worth it. So yeah, that's the news. I want to take this opportunity to remind everyone that while we may not agree with every decision that Cryptic makes, that is not an excuse to start attacking the devs. Shouting angry personal attacks over the internet solves nothing, and if anything, is only going to make Cryptic less willing to listen to us in the future. Because no one wants to talk to a screaming angry person. Not that I think you guys would resort to such behavior, but I think it's important to get that message out that you can be critical and constructive without being a jerk. Anyway, this has been my opinion on the whole matter. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. You've all been to YouTube, you know the routine, but it really does help the channel and I do appreciate it. My name's Stu, and I'll see you guys next time. Hopefully with a build video, I haven't put one out in a while. Other stuff keeps happening.